Hi there, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. So I just need to put on my glasses so I can see. Um, Today's episode is I'm going to share with you how we financed our journey and paid for the therapy of our two children. My husband is a mechanic. Nowadays they're called technicians. And I'm a secretary. So how did we pay for the therapy of two special needs children? This is how. Let's start with the letter of diagnosis. Remember, I said in the previous episode, I think it is actually important that you have that letter. Because, if you want to claim a tax rebate in South Africa, you need it. I don't know what the law states in other countries, but in South Africa, you need a letter of confirmation of diagnosis. That piece of paper that confirms that your child needs therapy opened doors for me. And I know that some parents, they are hesitant. They don't really want a letter of confirmation, but I could never understand why, because whatever the doctor says about my child, it's between me and the doctor. It's confidential. So what does it matter what he says? What matters is what I do with that piece of paper. So if I'm not about to tell the whole world, and if my child can benefit financially and make progress, then in a few years, maybe I can just toss that letter. But if that letter helps me to pay for the therapy that I can hardly afford, I am definitely getting a letter of diagnosis. And obviously your pediatrician can do that. Let's talk about the ITR-DD form. ITR-DD form. The person that confirmed the diagnosis, and in our case it was a pediatrician eventually, because remember, it was an OT who was brave enough to tell me that my son had autism. So in our case, by the time I found out that I needed an ITR-DD form, our pediatrician completed it. This is a form that you should complete and that our tax consultant wanted as a requirement from SARS before they would consider paying out a tax rebate. It is just one of those things that it's a must. There are many rules and regulations, so I will highlight them, the most important things that I think of that, I think is important. It used to be that an ITR-DD form is valid for 5 years. By the way, from this year, as from 2020, the ITR-DD form is valid for 10 years. So yay, good for you. I'm now past that. So, okay. So back then, every 5 years, it needed to be updated. Now, if your child, like my son, was diagnosed at 3 years, and providing you are very much on top of things and not putting it off or in denial or doing anything that will keep you back, but you got your form right quick and sorted it out, then your form is valid till the child is about 8 years old. So 5 years later, at about age 13, I needed an update. So with our update, my son's speech therapist actually completed the form. Now, I want to point this out because I didn't know that the speech therapist's opinion, would be valid enough, so to speak, or important enough. I thought it had to be done by a pediatrician, which to me meant make a very expensive appointment just to get a form updated. So I was very relieved when I learned that the speech therapist can do this. But please note, SARS is such a stickler for red tape. Well, I should not criticize them. They are just doing their jobs, right? But they refuse to pay out our tax rebate 1 year just because the form completed, has a block where you should put a company stamp. And the speech therapist didn't have a company stamp. She used her business card. So, that was a small detail that we had to rectify. I remember we were given a short time to do it because they refused to pay out. because of that last page. So I knew the speech therapist was very busy, obviously. So I called her and asked permission, took the business card, and down the road from me, and had a business stamp made for her for, I think at the time it was about 200 rands. And she could stamp that page, we could submit it to the tax consultant, who in turn submitted it to SARS, who then paid out our money. Yes, I remember I was on that little matter like a rash. I just thought, you are not holding back my money, the money my children need to make progress and become independent citizens of this country and make a contribution to society because of a mere stamp. Oh no. So you've got to be sharp with these little things. Action it immediately. We claimed a tax rebate. Now, this is very important. We claimed a tax rebate on my husband's salary because he earned the most between us. Therefore, we paid more tax. Makes sense, right? So if you want to claim a rebate and you want to claim the maximum, claim from the person's account the person's salary that pays the most tax. So we paid everything out of my husband's check account, everything. So let's just be clear. I do the paying of the accounts, etc. in our house. So I would make sure that everything is paid out of his bank account by EFT to the tutor or the school, whether it's for schooling and the school bus, whether it's speech therapy, anything to do with our kids and the fact that they needed help because of their diagnosis. You know, it was paid out of his account. Now, just by the way, I'm doing the accounts. I'm doing the payment on his behalf. Okay, I just want to mention that we would claim the bus fees because of our child she was attending school out of our zone. So that counted as travel fees incurred because she could not attend a local school in our zone. But we could not claim the actual school fees because, quite rightly, they say you would have paid school fees anyway. So if your child was normal or neurotypical, just so by the way, so you can't claim it. You can only pay if there's travel fees, and there was bus fees for our child. SARS wants a paper trail if they're going to pay a tax rebate, especially in the last couple of years. Back in the day, I know an affidavit was good enough. Not anymore. So if you're going to pay someone by EFT, just make sure you not only have it out of the correct bank account, which is Mr. Husband's bank account in this case, but you email yourself proof of payment and keep it. Print it out and keep it. At the end of the financial year, it makes life so much easier if I could just take those 12 pages of payments made to one tutor, tally it up, and staple it together. So tally up the 12 pages, one payment per month made to the speech therapist, and so you go on, do for the next therapist. And of course, if you keep this up at every month end, then doing your taxes is not such a big deal. So at one time, I took my son for swimming therapy. The lady was giving lessons to special needs kids, and he was really doing well with these one-on-one lessons that was for 1 hour on a Friday. So every year, I would just tally up 12 payments made to this therapist. Now, another thing that's very important for a tax rebate is a service provider letter. So if I have a tutor that I privately employ who is not part of an organization but used to work for an educational organization, and she has the necessary training. Now, whether she had the training when I met her or whether I met her and then sent her to get the training, the point either way, she has the qualification or skills needed to work with my child. She will then provide a letter that will state that she's qualified to work with my child. And we're talking about 2 sentences. Why she's working with him or with her, another 2 sentences, something like the child needs extra lessons to consolidate what was learned in class, or the child does not function optimally in a class setup and needs one-on-one intervention to make progress. How much money she received from Mr. Husband since 1 March of whatever year to 28 February of whatever the following year is. And that's just one sentence. So it's really a short letter. I prefer this method, especially when we're talking about a tutor that works for me, because then you can monitor how much money is paid out, because obviously we're on a budget. When are we not on a budget? The other method, for instance, with a swimming therapist, was that she would just invoice me. There was no timesheets involved. She would invoice me for the amount of hours we agreed on and that he attended. So I would keep each of the 12 invoices, match it up with the 12 EFT payments out of Mr. Husband's account. And please note, it is out of his account. But sometimes if I sit in front of this laptop and I'm logged in and I'm making a payment, even if it is out of his account, it will say that Mrs. Wife made the payment. No. It must say Mr. Husband made that payment. Make sure that all the boxes are ticked when it comes to this. It was an EFT, tick. Out of the correct account, tick. Made by the right person, tick. Correct amount, tick. And just note that even if this therapist supplied me with invoices, even if they supplied you with invoices, you still need a service provider statement from her. We also claim a rebate for medical expenses. This is just something I'm mentioning on the side, obviously, because any rebate, the bigger your rebate, the better, more funds you have for therapy. Especially if my medical aid was exhausted and I had to pay cash or private for things. Also try not to pay cash. Pay by EFT. And if you pay cash, see that it uses your credit card number or the number of your card, so it must appear that the Mr. Husband paid for this. Pay with Mr. Husband's card. One example of this was the braces for my daughter. There is not a medical aid in this country that I know of that will pay for braces for your teeth. They deem it cosmetic. So, in some cases, your child really needs it. We're not talking about a skewed tooth or two. It's like the jaw is chewing wrong and big hoopla. I postponed my daughter's for about 2 years and then I couldn't postpone it any longer. It had to happen. So, fortunately, the orthodontist has a program where you can pay it off. I think you pay 1,000 or 1,080 rands a month for the 2 years that it will take to fix the teeth or something. There's a little form but what I like is the fact that they actually, help you to pay it off. And I just keep the proof of payment that I made to them every month, because it is a medical expense incurred. You keep your 12 payments made by EFT, and I would just hand it into our disability tax consultant. Now, I must mention that another parent of the many parents that I know introduced me to BENDELS tax consultants. They have their disability tax unit or department. They have a disability unit that works with children with special needs, etc. And since then, it really felt like someone is on my side. Someone cares about the fact that we have to pay out so much money for one-on-one early intervention therapies and the like, especially as we had 2 children who needed therapy. And the fantastic thing was, I didn't even need to go and see this guy, Richard. I'll just say your name. I didn't even have to go and see you. Everything was done by email. And even today, it's still done by email. I have met you, obviously, and that was great. But I cannot praise BENDELS tax consultants, the disability unit, high enough. Sipokazi is the lady that deals with she's my contact person, and they are doing a fantastic job. So they're very clued up with the law and how it changes, and they always advise me in advance from next year, this and this must be done differently. And our tax rebate is usually about 35%. So that's great, because any help will do. 35% of something is better than 35% of nothing. And they also have this, BENDELS tax consultants have great rates. And if you want to get in contact with them, with this specific unit, put it in the comments and I will send you their email address. Okay, so the SASSA grant. Let's talk about the SASSA grant because that helps a lot. If your child is under the age of 18 years, which my child, both children were at the time, and has been diagnosed with autism, and you earn, now at the time, this has now changed, but at the time, if you earned less than 300,000 rands per annum netto together, so that's your net income, 300,000, both incomes taken together, then you qualify for the care dependency grant. But I remember that every year it would be, the next year it was 325,000, the next year 350,000. So it like jumps with 25,000 per annum. And I mean, our salaries didn't jump with 25,000 per annum. So we definitely kept on qualifying and qualifying. And the grant that you get is about the same as the old age pension that the elderly get. So, let me just, I want to switch and just read to you, because I will put the form that I downloaded from the SASSA website in the link, in the comments below. So, there is a means test that they do, and they say, I'm going to read it. In South Africa, social assistance is subject to means testing, which implies that SASSA evaluates the income of the person applying for social assistance in order to determine whether the person's means are below a stipulated amount. This means test is a way of determining whether a person qualifies to receive a grant, as grants are indeed meant for those who have insufficient means to support themselves. If the applicant is married, half of the annual joint income will be taken into consideration. So you can see how that has changed. Now it's not the joint income must be lower than 300,000 net. It is now, it just says, if the applicant is married, half of the annual joint income will be taken into consideration. So I would assume that means gross, the gross income. If the applicant fosters a care-dependent child, he or she can receive both a foster child grant and a care dependency grant for the same child. Now, let me just tell you this little thing. By the time that I found out that we qualify for a grant, care dependency grant for each child, and it amounted to about 3,000 Rand a month if you take it together. By the time we found out that we qualified for this, I think 6 years of not claiming had gone by. So we're in this office, and when eventually this, I think it took about 4 visits to this Bellville office, and I got to the last person that I had to see, because now it was granted, approved, we're going to pay it out. And the guy told me, if the court appointed the children to you, I said, no, I gave birth to them myself. So if the court had appointed them to me at that time, they would have back paid me the 5 or 6 years, which amounted to something like 120,000 rands. But because I gave birth to them myself, 0 was on its way to me. Oh, makes you feel like crying in your hands. Anyway, so how you go about this is you would call your SASSA office to find out where the nearest satellite branch is in your area. Now, I would never, ever advise anyone to visit the main office here in our area in Bellville. For us, it was a traumatic experience. It is something I've never seen the likes of in my life. I will not repeat what happened. It is in the past. I would not like to remember that. So, safe to say that I have had more than one parent come to me in tears because of the treatment they received. I think that they do get a lot of people who are chancers, who do not really, who are not eligible for the grant. They're not really disabled, or they're taking chances. So maybe they get to do with so many of these people that they are fed up. Or this gentleman who was in control there was fed up. So he just, the days, and it's not just one day, it was the 4 or 5 times I had to visit that office. Every time the same speech would be there, and it would be shouted to everybody. If you're here to take a chance, whatever. Now I'm thinking, here we are sitting, everybody's sitting here. Now there are some parents like me who's there legitimately with 2 disabled children, but you're being accused with the rest, or whoever is taking a chance, as someone who is trying to, steal money? I don't know. It's just, you're already traumatized. Now you have to go through this as well. So all I can say is develop a thick skin, because if you qualify, you qualify, and that money is something you need to help your child, 2 children in our case. So you go to your nearest SASSA satellite office and inquire. Say you have a child that has autism and you qualify for the care dependency grant. Please, now be polite, ask what is the procedure to follow. Then they will ask you, first question, have you been to a doctor to confirm the diagnosis? That's just, I've been asked that every time. So then I say, politely, yes, I went to a private doctor or pediatrician who confirmed the diagnosis, and my child is now receiving therapy sessions weekly, which is probably something that you will say as well, if you're in the same boat. Then they will be very fast to point out that their doctor needs to confirm the diagnosis. So they just dismiss the fact that you've been to see a doctor. Or the very last one I went to, they actually took a copy. You keep the original. Just hold on to your originals. They took a copy, and but they're not really interested. They want their doctor. Their government doctor must diagnose you. So it's okay, if that's what they want, that's what they want. So they'll give you the forms to complete, put your name on a list, and then they'll tell you that you must go to the clinic and open a file. So that by the time you get to the clinic on the day in question, because they give you a date, that you already have a file. Now that is, if you're not someone who normally visits a government clinic, you need to do this, because I don't normally visit government clinics. But if you do, and it's in your area, it's local, you probably already have a file, so it's not necessary. So my best advice in this whole process is to pray that you get to the right person. Because there are people who work for SASSA and for the government and the clinics who are absolute angels. They are angels. They have real empathy for the people sitting in front of them, But then there are people who are not angels. So for those, you need to pray that you don't get to them. So the bottom line is, if you qualify, apply for the grant, and it will be, I'm thinking, it's about 1,500 rands a month, 1,500. So there, if you qualify for that, there you've created a little subsidy for yourself of about 1,400 rands a month, let's say. Let's be conservative, because parents often say to me, oh, they can't afford one-on-one tutoring. So, of course, I understand that. I was one of those parents, right? But often I've heard parents criticizing the fact that therapy is so expensive. And if you attend an early intervention therapy center, I've heard parents say, like, they're ripping me off. Well, just think about it. In a ratio of 1 teacher, 1 student, how cheap do you think it's going to be? Because you don't want just any teacher. You want someone who's trained to work with your special needs child, because you're not trained. I'm not trained to work with my special needs child, and I want my child to make progress. So how cheap do you think it's going to be? You want that one teacher to be the right teacher. You want her to know what to do with your child. One-on-one therapy is expensive all over the world, not just in South Africa. Anywhere where the ratio is one-on-one is expensive. You know, I think the only difference between us and other countries is that it's probably more subsidized. Here we, you know, in South Africa, even more so, because our government in this third world country does not sponsor as much as in a first world country. We suffer. So be clever and know what you can apply for, and create these little subsidies. I call it little subsidies, you know, for yourself. So say a parent says to me, they can't afford therapy. My response is usually, now let's think about that for a moment. If your child was 100% neurotypical, normal, and attended the local school, you would be paying school fees, right? How much? Let's not go overboard, but let's say about 1,000 Rand school fees. Now, let's say you earn a little enough that you qualify for that care dependency grant from SASSA. That's another approximately 1,200. I'm now being very conservative here. Say it's 1,200 per month that's coming your way. Now, let's say you've done everything that I've done, and you've paid everybody by EFT, and you've kept it and handed it in. You receive a tax rebate, and let's be very, very conservative about this rebate. And let's say it's just 12,000 rands. It's usually more, but remember, they can't give you more money than you've paid tax. So if you've paid less than 12,000 Rand tax this year, you're not going to get more than 12,000 Rand tax rebate. So say it's 12,000 Rand. That's another 1,000 Rand a month that if you spread it over the 12 months. So it's a little subsidy. Now, let's say you do a fundraiser. And I'm going to, in a moment, I'll explain how I used to do a fundraiser, the easiest kind. Let's say you've made 12,000 net. Then there is another 1,000 Rand a month if you spread it over 12 months. Now that amounts to 3,200 Rand per month that you have available to pay for your child per month for therapy. Now, and only now, do you start digging into your pocket and making sacrifices like, I would have spent this money on that, but now I have to spend it on tutoring or therapy. And let's assume that is 1,000 Rand. So add that to the 3,200. So now we're on 4,200 that you are spending on your one child for their monthly therapy. Now that's one child. Now I know it costs more than 4,200 Rands a month, right? It costs more. But now you have available 4,200 Rand. So you can book lessons to the value of 4,200 Rands. But who's going to look after your child the rest of the time? So if you have to employ a nanny or a domestic helper to take care of your child at home, because you have to go to work and earn a living, right? And you can't afford to put the child in full-time therapy, and because the waiting list at the few government subsidized schools that we have is very long, at the time when I wanted to enroll my child, the list was 6 years long. 6 years. It's shocking. So you have to go to work. The list is very long. You can't wait for 6 years. So that means your child is between staying at home or attending private therapy. Then you can claim, so if that is your case, the child must attend one-on-one therapy. You can't look after the child for the rest of the time. You need someone. So you appoint a domestic worker or a nanny. Then you can claim her entire salary as a tax rebate because she has just become his carer. You know, and that when that child is taking a nap and she happens to clean the house a little bit is incidental. So your tax rebate has just jumped up by a significant amount per annum, right? Okay, let's talk about the last point, fundraising. I hate fundraising. Just because it feels to me it's incredibly stressful, and it feels to me like I'm begging for money to take care of my child. It's a terrible feeling. So it's therapy that your child desperately needs to develop to his full potential. And yet here you are as a parent, you know, having to bear the full weight of this. Because autism is one of those things where the education system says it's a medical problem. The child needs occupational therapy, and the medical system says it's an educational problem. The child needs special schooling. So while the medical system and the educational system is fighting it out, we can only claim from medical aid OT and speech, and you know, so we have to bear the full weight of this. So this is what my husband and I did. We did other things as well to raise funds, but this is by far the easiest, least labor intensive, and really best return on funds. And you can do it without money in your hands. Now, isn't that good news? So let me tell you what we did. We would every year for a few years, we did this every year, a lucky draw. When? Not any time of the year, I'm telling you when. For the month of October and the month of November. Okay? And I think the timing was really good because everybody's getting ready for Christmas and already thinking of Christmas. So we would really make it worth their while. So if a person would buy a ticket from us for 20 rands, and I have 4 prizes or 5 prizes, every time someone draws, and you have to draw 4 times because you've got 4 prizes or 5, that 120 rand is going to give you 4 or 5 chances of winning. That's really good value. So this is the fundraising, the way of fundraising. It felt like people were helping us and we could give something back to them as well, you know. So it's not just we want your money or we need your money. It's more like we need your money. This is how I did it. So I am computer literate, and I would create a ticket on MS Word. Now we're talking an A4 page with 5 little blocks. I could get 5 little blocks on an A4 page. And I would put on it, on that one little ticket, you need this information. The prizes to be won. You will ask a simple question like, in which month is Christmas celebrated? And they have to write in the answer, so leave a space for them to write in the answer. Mention on which date the draw will take place. Leave a space for a person's name and their cell phone number, because obviously if that ticket wins, you have to phone them. And each ticket must have a unique number. I think that is sort of duh. Otherwise you sit with 2 tickets, well, and someone else says, that was my ticket number. You don't want any problems like that. The aim was always to make 20,000 rand. That's the aim. So at 20 rand a ticket, we had to sell 1,000 tickets over a period of 60 days. That's about 17 tickets a day. That's not too bad, but still, you can't do it by yourself. This is where family and friends and colleagues come in. This is how people can help you. This is how society can help you. And you have family and friends. Hopefully you do have colleagues. And you have people who know about your child's condition and they're willing to help you. So I would make one A4 page and I would go to a postnet, local postnet, and have it printed back to back. I would have, because I always put some information of my child and a picture of my child on the back of the ticket. So on the one side, I've got the 5 tickets, And if you turn it around, I've printed on the back of each ticket information about my child. So I would, for instance, mention that my child is diagnosed with autism, needed therapy to make progress, and I would thank them for buying the ticket. Have good manners and thank them for buying the ticket. And I would mention that if they wanted to make a further contribution, they could pay the money directly into the account of the early intervention center where my child is receiving therapy. Because there are people who have means to help you, and because you're doing a fundraiser, now they've become aware of you and they want to really help you. So give them an opportunity to help you, so put this information on the back. So if the person can make payments into that organization's account and with a reference number, with a specific reference number, your child's account would be credited. So make sure that maybe it's your child's account number. Make sure. If that organization has a Section 18A certificate, whoever is donating to you can even get a tax rebate certificate, So tax rebate certificates is really a way of saying thank you for helping us. So to print 1,000 tickets, back to the fundraiser, to print 1,000 tickets, I would have to ask Postnet to print 200 pages of these A4 pages with 5 tickets per page. Now, I usually ask for 1 or 2 pages extra in case I make mistakes. But, sometimes there just wasn't money for an extra page or 2. So you just had to get everyone right. So I remember it happened once that my husband came and asked me, he came home from work and asked, can he help? Because I was busy doing this. We annually did this big thing. And he asked, and I said, are you going to make mistakes? Because there's no room for error here. He didn't make one mistake. He didn't make a single mistake. So I also would ask them to laser cut the tickets, which they would happily do, especially if you're printing with 100% and everything lines up, back to back. I would usually ask them to do just 1 page back to back to test before we're going to do the 200 pages, see that everything lines up. Because you can't be there and then try and line it up, I'd be doing that somewhere else, unless maybe you're not as computer literate and you want to actually go to a Postnet and ask them to set this up for you at a special fee. Maybe you want to draw it on a page or whatever and take it to them and say, can you create this on computer for me? Anyway, to have them laser cut it was great. I used to cut it by hand earlier years. Then that night, my husband and I would sit and we would make little books of 10 tickets each. So 1 booklet is 10 tickets, 20 Rand each, and that amounts to 200 Rands. So 1 booklet is 200 Rands. And each booklet has a blank piece of paper as a front cover with a place that says ticket number 001 to 20. Then the next one would be ticket number 21 to 30. And I would be tempted to write 20 to 30, but 20 already exists. So just really keep it together here, that your numbering lines up. With this, I would draw up a list, usually in Excel, MS Excel, that would have columns. And this would be like my register. Now, this document was really important to me, okay? So on the very left column, from top to bottom, I would mark 1 to 100 because I've got 100 little booklets. So at number 1, I would write in the next column, ticket number 1 to 20. Then the next column would be blank because there I would fill in the name. And the next column is blank because I would fill in the cell phone number of the person who took a booklet. Then a column for the date they took it. Then a column for paid, and I would make a note when they paid. So now the last thing before we start selling is A4 posters. So I would make about 10 on this A4 poster would be the same information, more or less, as on the ticket. Now, let me just say why I would make a poster. Say a colleague or a family member takes 2 booklets and a poster to their workplace. Maybe they will just stick it up there by them. Colleagues will say, oh, what's that? And they can say, oh, I'm doing a fundraiser for my cousin's daughter, cousin's son, and here's the ticket. But that A4 page just explains everything in a nutshell. So on that A4 poster, I would have a picture of my son, which is now obviously bigger than the little picture on the ticket. I would have what he's diagnosed with and that he needs therapy to make progress, that we are doing a lucky draw and what the prizes are, and when the prizes will be drawn, so that you know when the lucky draw is coming to an end. Again, I mention on there that people who feel so inclined are more than welcome to make donations directly to the center my child attends, and what reference number to use so that they can be sure that our son will benefit, Because some people don't really want to make a payment to you. Maybe it's trust, Maybe they sort of, but they are more than willing to pay the organization because then they know, it's definitely above board. So now I will put the 100 booklets in the top of a Rototrim, Rototrim printing paper. They've got these nifty little boxes, and then the lid is a wide rimmed lid. I take the lid off, turn it upside down, and that becomes my box. Everything is neat and tidy, and with that goes my register. So now let's quickly talk about the prizes, because obviously there is no fundraiser without a prize. And we said we want to make money and we don't have money. So how? I would choose prizes that it would appeal to anybody, right? Anybody, from the lowest earning to the highest. Well, technically, the highest earning won't be interested in buying a ticket. They might be more inclined to make a donation, but you get my drift. So, our prizes would be, first prize, remember, it's October, November, we're heading for Christmas. First prize, a lamb at a halal butcher. And I always went to the same one because they were excellent. And that was about 1,000 Rand or 900 Rands. Okay, I don't know how much it is now. Most people I know would like a leg of lamb for Christmas. And meat in the freezer for the lean January month, right? So, second prize, 1,000 Rand voucher at Pick n Pay. So again, most people I know, even those who normally don't shop at Pick n Pay, would like to win 1,000 Rand voucher from Pick n Pay. Third prize, third prize, fourth prize, maybe a fifth. You don't have to think of something new every time. If you've got a winning recipe, just go with it. But if you get prizes donated, great. But if you don't, what we did, I remember specifically one year what we did was, third prize was again a lamb at the same butcher. Fourth prize was again about 1,000 Rand voucher at Pick n Pay. So you don't have to come up with new things every time. Fifth prize one year was a gift hamper of perfumes because my husband knew someone in the industry. I think it was valued at 1,500 Rands. But again, I'm glad for donations as prizes. But what would a guy do with a hamper of perfume, Give it to his lady. You see, the lamb and voucher at Pick n Pay would appeal to both men and women, and young and old. So I've put on the ticket that I would give the prizes, that I would give those prizes out in 60 days. That means between now and then, there are 2 paydays. So without having bought a prize yet, posters are ready, tickets are ready, we're going to start selling. But without having bought a prize yet, But of course, the onus is on us to produce a prize and have it ready at the first week or on the date of the draw. Let's say the first Saturday of December, we start selling tickets. No, that's fraud. No, it's not fraud, because we must produce the prize. But let me tell you what happened. This is what we did. As soon as the first 50 tickets are sold, for that 1,000 rand, we take that 1,000 rand and we go and buy the voucher for the lamb at the butcher and put it aside. There it is. First prize is already ready, put aside. So when the next 50 tickets is sold, we go and we buy the voucher at Pick n Pay, put that aside. So out of the 20,000 rand, we might spend 200 and 300 rand on postnet printing, 4,000 on the prizes, but then you've still made 16,000, you see. So divide that up into 12 months, and I've already calculated, that's 1,333 rands over 12 months. Or we just pay it over as a lump sum and it's credited on my son's account. Now, of course, you can't claim that as a tax rebate, because only payments made by Mr. Husband will qualify for tax rebates, quite rightly so. But at least your child is getting a sponsorship that you arranged. So, and thanks to all the friends and the colleagues and the family who would say, oh, I'll just take a booklet. And then at the end of the month, you go and you collect your 200 rands from them. You see? Because some people have the means to say, just give me a booklet, I'll give you a 200 rand. They're not going to bother with 20 singles, buying single tickets. See? So, or they say they'll sell a booklet or two amongst their friends and colleagues. So it's really fantastic to see how friends and family and colleagues can make a difference. And I also think that if people see that you are doing something, then they jump on the bandwagon and they want to help you because they see that you're helping yourself. Now, when it comes to the day of the draw, I would usually arrange that we go to the school, if the school is open, and there's staff around there so people can see. It's a public thing. No one's going to say, you sat in a corner and you pick the people who's going to win the prizes. There's no cheating, right? You go to the school on the Friday afternoon or on the Saturday morning to the center if they're open where there's staff, and it's public, and we put it in a box, and you first ticket you draw out, you write on their first prize, and second ticket you draw, you write on second prize, and then you call them and they collect their voucher, or you go and deliver to them, however it is, how it came about that they even, initially took a ticket from you. If you drove to them, then you're going to drive to them again. So at one point, I remember that my husband would also cycle and would be sponsored per kilometer that he finishes. But honestly, I'm so glad that is history, because there was a stage where we did 3 fundraisers per year, and not 3 lucky draws. I mean, just the one was a lucky draw. And then there was a cycling per kilometer, and it's just, it's too much stress for me to do that and still take care of the children and have a full-time job. It's just too much. This lucky draw at the end of the year was by far the super easiest way to do a fundraiser and the least labor intensive. So all you have to do is talk to people. Tell everyone you know about this, and in today's technology, it's just so much easier with Facebook and, Instagram and whatnot. You can sell so many tickets. I think if I have to do that now, Facebook would be the easiest way to do it. So that is all I'm talking about today. This is the end of this episode. If you have a question about anything that I've said, post it in the comments. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you want to get more videos, please subscribe. And thank you very much. I look forward to more conversations, and God bless and goodbye.